Well, that's a good start to the morning. All right, guys, welcome back to the garage. It's Tush coming at you. It's Sunday, April the 13th, 2025. And we're going to take a little bit of a break today from doing the Bastuck rack and pinion conversion kit installation. We're at the point of doing the wiring. And on my previous video, I mentioned that we are waiting for our wiring expert to arrive tomorrow on Monday. So in the interim, I think what we'll do is another project that needs to be done on this car, according to the list that Alex, the owner, gave me. And that's in installing these oil seals for the rear axle tube. So there's the seals on the illustration there, number 51. And if I look at that says axle tube oil seal. Not to be confused with there's actually a hub oil seal. So I'm not going to do the hub oil seal. That requires some special tools. But we are going to go after this tube seal. So let's do this together. All right, we've gone ahead and removed the rear tire. And trust me, those things, those chrome wires, are extremely heavy compared to the alloys. So what we need to do now is remove these two drum brake screws. These can always be a bit of a challenge. Often they seize in there, so hopefully we're not going to have that problem. If we do, obviously a little heat helps here. If you try to loosen them and they don't come off initially, I would heat them before you strip those screws out. Otherwise, you're going to be drilling them out. So go ahead and do that now on both sides, and then we'll get to looking in behind the brake drum. All right, good thing is the brake hubs came off pretty easily. Everything actually looks pretty good in here. It's nice and dry. So lots of pad life left. Actually, it looks like he's got fairly new springs. You can see the Moss part number there on the spring still. Looks like the suspension parts used to be yellow back here as well, so matching the front. And you can see, I don't know if you can see back there, but it looks like he's got new nylock nuts on the pinion. So I don't know if he's had the pinion oil seal fixed probably. So yeah, looks like some work's been done back here. Fuel lines look good. I saw the brake lines on the other side look good. Emergency brake cables look good. So yeah, that checks out pretty well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to remove this axle and the brake back plate along with it. Now, there I think are 6 bolts, if I'm not mistaken, going from memory. And usually on the back, there's a lock tab holding 2 of each of the bolts. Now, you can probably see, I think if I position that properly, you can see those little sort of rounds there. Those are where the bolts come through from the back of the backing plate. And like I said, there's usually a lock tab on each one of those 2. And sometimes those are being replaced with lock washers, which make it a lot easier because it's a little difficult undoing the lock tabs in this location under the car. So we'll see what we get when we get under there and take a look at the back of this brake back plate. We'll be right back. Well, while I'm here, I may as well talk a little bit about this emergency brake cable. We are going to detach that. It's simply a cotter pin with a clevis pin arrangement. So we'll just remove the cotter pin, remove the clevis, and that will detach the brake cable from the back of the brake back plate. So that's a fairly easy task on both sides to do, so we'll go ahead and do that now. All right, here we are under the car, having a quick look, and it looks pretty good under here. Nice looking exhaust. Looks like a stainless exhaust on the car. It does look like it's had a little bit of a frame patch here, which is kind of common on these cars to see some patches here and there. So other than that, it looks pretty good, like I'd mentioned. So we're going to get on the inside of this brake back plate here, and we're going to have a look up and see what we find as far as those fasteners that hold these hold this brake back plate on and hold the axle in. All right, here we are at the back of the brake back plate. And I'm not sure if you can see, but here are the fasteners here. They're quite dirty. And like I said, I think there are 6 of them in total. You can probably just see the lock tab there. And there's a lock tab there. Now it looks like maybe only one of the tabs is down, which would be the outside one. Anyway, we're going to have to clean under here significantly just to get to the lock tabs and get a socket or a wrench on the top of those bolts. So again, it's a little difficult because those lock tabs get increasingly more difficult as you go towards the top of the axle. The bottom ones are a little easy, and then getting to the other ones gets more difficult as you go higher up. Anyway, we'll spend a little bit of time cleaning under here first, and then we'll go to town trying to get those lock tabs released before we can release those 6 bolts, set screws, or whatever you want to call them. All right, another quick tip for you. So we're up on top of the car now, and easier to get the top bolts out from up here. So just get yourself a lighted inspection mirror. They come in handy. You can see there is the fastener I'm trying to get to with the lock tab bent. And so we kind of know where that is. We can sort of feel around a little bit with our hands, but at least that shows us the location. I've already got the top one out. You can see that there. And then we have another one on the other side that we need to get to there, but the ones below it are undone and out. So we're going after these remainders up on the top here. All right, so inspection mirror comes in handy, especially a little lighted one. They're cheap. Okay, here's the locking plates and the 6 fasteners out. So we're just about ready to pull the back plate and the axle out. I just wanted to give you a quick look of those. So hopefully I've got enough room. It's going to be close. I obviously need to pull the axle out, this way. So hopefully I don't have to move the car over any further. I think we should be okay. So let me set you up on a tripod, and we'll get that axle and back plate pulled out and off. So one thing I'm going to have to do before I remove that brake back plate is I'm going to have to remove the hard line from the rear of the wheel cylinder, unfortunately, which means I'm going to have to bleed the brakes. So it's got to be done though for me to be able to get to that seal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just detach that rear brake line, the hard line, and then we would be able to move the axle and the brake back plate off so we can get to that inner seal. Okay, the rear hard line to the brake cylinder has been disconnected. So the axle and the back plate should be ready to be pulled off. Now, one word of caution, there are probably shims behind the brake back plate that you need to keep account of as they need to go back in place. They set the axle end float, and sometimes there are as many as 3 or 4 of them back there. So make sure you keep them handy. And make sure you keep them side to side, so don't mix the axles up, keep them on each side of the car. So we'll go ahead and we'll pull that out now. Hopefully I'll have enough room to get the axle that I should have, but let's give this a shot. Together. Okay, there we go. So let's pull the axle first. Keep a hand on the brake back plate. Okay, there's the axle. Here's the brake back plate. Okay, we'll probably clean that up. Now, here's the shims I was talking about. So you have a shim stack here, right on the end of the axle tube. So in this case we have 3, possibly 4. I don't know if there's 2 stuck together or if it's one thick one. Looks like 1 thick and 2 thin. So 3 on this side, on the passenger side. So now is the opportunity to clean this up a little bit before we go any further. We don't want to introduce any any dirt into the axle tube itself. So I'll bring it over here for a quick look so you can see how much grease is in there currently. There is a grease zerk here on the bottom of the axle tube, which allows you to grease in here for the hub bearing. So let me bring you over here and I'll show you that quickly before we clean things up. I may as well show you those shims a little bit more closely as well. So here are the shims we're talking about. Okay. So they go right here along this face of the axle tube. So here is what that looks like. Okay. And the grease seal is in there that we're going to be pulling out. So Like I said, we want to clean this area up. It's pretty greasy and grimy. We don't want to introduce any dirt inside the axle. So we're going to wipe out all this old grease. We're going to wipe off all this crud from the outside of the axle, being careful, and probably use some brake clean again to get this cleaned up. And then we'll get to pulling out that inner grease seal or oil seal. All right, now that things are cleaned up a little bit, you can see the seal in there. I think you can see that anyway. So that's looking good. It looks better now cleaned up. So I have taken the new seal and just sort of held it up there to see if it looks like it's the right size. And it looks like it is. It's always a good idea to do that before you actually pull things to make sure you have the correct part. Otherwise, you could be waiting on some significant downtime. Anyway, we're going to go to the driver's side and we're going to do the same thing and pull the axle over there with the brake back plate. And then we'll come back when we're ready to remove the seals. All right, let's do the driver's side together. I think this one's going to be a little stubborn, so let's check it out. All right, on the driver's side, this axle is being quite stubborn. We've got the 6 fasteners out. We've got the hard brake line detached, but it's stuck. So we're going to give it a little gentle persuasion. I did take the brake parts off so we can get a bit of a tap here on this hub, or rear hub basically, and see if we can move this off the brake back plate. I can move the brake back plate around, but yeah, the hub's not coming off. Let's try different levels of persuasiveness. I've got the rubber hammer, which is not working. So now we're going to go to a copper hammer, see if that works. And if not, we're going to go to a lead hammer. Not a lead hammer, ball peen hammer. There we go. Oh, that one was pretty stubborn. All right, let's pull that out. That's making a bit of a mess. So we'll have to top up the rear end with some gear oil as well, since we've lost a bit out of the tube, which is fine. I see Alex actually has a drain plug on his differential, so he's obviously had some work done on that at some point. Anyway, I do have some GL4 to be able to fill this back up, so we'll do that once we get the seals replaced and everything buttoned back up. Anyway, we can now remove the brake back plate. There we go. And again, keep track of the shims. This one, only 2 shims, I believe. Yeah, it looks like only 2 shims. Actually 3 thin shims. I think it's 3. Anyway, I have to set, oh yeah, 3. They're kind of glued together. 3 thin. All right, so let's clean this up and move on. All right, I've got the go-ahead from Alex to go ahead and strip and clean up the brake back plates and the brakes themselves. So we're going to do that. I'd already partially disassembled the driver's side anyway, as you recall. So we'll do the same here on the passenger side and strip it all into individual components. We'll take the adjusters off, the wheel cylinders off, and get those cleaned up a little bit. We'll take off the emergency brake arm. We'll take off the backing plates here, or the lock plates, off the cylinder. And we'll get that cleaned up a little bit. We'll re-grease this so that's sliding nicely. We'll get the adjuster greased up so that's looking good. So yeah, so we'll spend a few hours out here getting these cleaned up and into primer and into paint. All right, well, Lynn's working on the wiring piece. I'm going to be doing some other jobs, which will be probably in a separate video because I want to keep the rack conversion video separate from the other jobs that we're doing on the car. So I've gone ahead and started replacing the rad hoses here. So new upper hose, new bottom hoses with the steel coupler in the middle. We've got new bulkhead hoses here installed, still not clamped, but installed. New bypass hose. So now we are at the point where we need to go under the dash and do the two hoses that come out the top of the heater. And I'm just about to drop the glove box and empty the glove box first, and we'll drop the glove box. But as I had a little conversation with Alex, this box is not in the greatest of condition. And you can see it sort of dropped here on the right-hand side. It should be fairly level at the bottom of the dash. So this may not go back in after I remove it. It's just barely in there as it is. It's not really being held at the top by anything. So I doubt this will go back in after I pull it out, but I've been given the go-ahead to remove it, and we'll probably get a new unit to put in there in its place. So first thing I need to do is to empty the box and then get in there and remove it. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. All right, we've got our handy dandy mirror out here. And again, I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, but it's been zip tied here at the back. So we're just about to cut the zip tie. I don't know if you can see that. Probably not. Anyway, trust me, there's a zip tie back there if you can't see it in the video. We're going to cut that and drop the box. All right, looks like there's a few screws along the bottom here that are still attached to the box. So we'll go ahead and remove those now. As mentioned, the top screws are not attached at all, so we don't have to worry about those. So let's undo these, and that should be able to drop the box. I did cut the zip tie on the back, so let's go ahead and do that now. All right, a quick shot of the old glove box removed, and it's pretty deformed, and you can see lots of water damage here. A little crunch in the back here, so that's seen better days. Let's have a look at the space now we have to work with. All right, so here we are under the dash. I have disconnected the two hoses for the heater, so you can see that space up there. So I'm trying to get, I don't know if you can see the heater hoses back there, and I'm trying to get at. So I can see the hose clamps from here. It's going to be tight, but I think I can get them. So it's this hose here that needs to be replaced. It goes to the bulkhead, and the one on the other side as well. So there's a look under the dash. And at the empty space. Okay, moving back to the cooling system, you can probably see that we've got the radiator back installed, and we've got all the new hoses installed, including the ones under the dash, which were a little bit of fun, but they are in there. I don't know if you can see under here. So there's the new hoses, both sides. So they look good. So we'll get those tucked back up, and we'll get the vents hooked back up. So yeah, so that's good. Another job crossed off the list. Now we're in the process of installing the electric fan. It's a Hayden fan that we're going to put as a pusher on the front of the radiator. So here is what Alex bought. I'll give you a Moss part number, 231688 fan kit, electric 12-inch. So that comes with thermostat or a temperature sender, a relay. So it's a fin style that you just sort of plug in to the fins. You don't actually have to have a bung welded into the radiator. And then it's got a bunch of relays and wiring for the fan, so, and fuses. So looks like a pretty good kit, I think. And it also comes with the mounting hardware for the fan through the fins. So we haven't had a lot of luck with these, but we're probably going to go with this since it's, you know, made for the kit. But a lot of times we'll just use zip ties instead of these. The zip ties tend to be stronger than the actual hardware that comes with the kit. Okay, we're on to mounting that electric fan, and you want to have it as high up as you can on the radiator because we're looking at where the attachment points are for the bottom of the front apron. I'm just running a straight line across here to see if we have any interference, and I think we're going to be okay there. Now, just a quick note on the Hayden fan, you may need to trim a little bit on one of the sides to get it to fit squarely. We could get it to fit a little bit of an angle, but if you want it to fit squarely all the way to the top of the rad, you might have to do a little trimming on the plastic piece here. We just cut a little notch out and it fits inside the frame of the radiator now if you do a little surgery, so don't be afraid. Now this is a pusher fan, as mentioned. We've got the airflow sticker on, so as long as we wire this up properly, it should push air through the radiator. Now, Alex is going to mount a switch for this, but we're thinking since we have that thermostat, we may do it automatically. Just in case Alex is not watching the gauge, it'll turn automatically. You can basically override it with the switch, or it'll turn on automatically regardless. So I think we'll probably end up wiring it that way since we have the thermostat for it.
Yeah.
All right, starting to install the wiring for the fan. And we decided to take the old horn location for the relay and for the ground. Since we already have a relay over here for the horns, figured we'd sort of match things. There's a couple of fuses here that'll be sort of able to get to still. Then some wiring that runs across, obviously to hook up to the front of the fan. And we're just running wiring now into the car. So we run it through this grommet here, so we can grab that under the dash and give some power, or grab some power from under there from somewhere. Haven't figured that out yet. So making progress.
It's getting
See,
aligned.
we have the true
Steering alignment.
mechanical expert here and wiring expert is lecturing Alin here on wiring.
Like individually, or does it?
It's the quality assurance or quality control guy.
In condescends with something else on the shaft.
All right, 7:45 a.m. and we're just waiting for Lynn to show up to finish off the fan wiring with me and to install a couple of switches on the dash. We're back on the 1958 Triumph TR3A project, and we're going to wrap up a whole bunch of things in this video, hopefully. I did start a few of them and took some previous video segments to Lynn coming and helping me with the wiring of the slip ring, which was the last video. So some of these things might be a little bit out of order, like you'll probably see the radiator installed. But anyway, we will endeavor to continue on once Lynn gets here to finish off the wiring and hopefully get that front apron back on. Okay, we're installing the switches here under the dash, and we're going to try to pick it up from the stock rail. And we're going to do a switch this side. Alex already has a switch here, but we want to make it an identical switch, so he's got an actual switch for this side as well. We're going to actually push this switch back a little bit, just so it's level with the face here of the dash. So Alex has got some nice switches, actually, kind of period correct, almost like Jaguar. I'm going to call them Jaguar switches, but they're nice, nice rocker switches. So you can probably see those there, and they've got a nice mounting plate. These are from, I guess, called Retrofit or Revotech, or Retrofit is the brand name, but sold by Revotech. So classic Jaguar style. These are actually overdrive switches. Anyway, we'll get those installed. Well, we've encountered some more bad parts, let's say. So those switches I was just talking about, this one seems to be defective because, flip it on. So there is on, there is off. So apparently there's an issue with the internals of the switch, where it actually
shake the leg.
Yeah, You can shake the back of the switch and it'll turn on and off, but you know, it won't work.
That's
actually.
off position
Yeah,
right
it
now.
sticks basically. So that's off now. Turn it back on. Turn it back off. Stays on.
And even if I shake the leg, it comes off. But then
Yeah.
in the middle of the night,
It'll, yeah, any vibration basically, it'll flip it back on. So
yeah.
that's not good. So we'll need to get another switch for there. So I think what we'll do temporarily, at least, let me break out the other switch that we have. We'll install it there. At least we still have this switch here. Maybe we can put the housing there at least, and maybe the old switch. We'll see what we can do. And then maybe Alex can just swap that out at a later date. But anyway, let me unpackage the other switch and see if that one actually works.
She's a mix
So
of,
we're in the Taj Mahal, watching Rusty Beauties with the Rusty Beauty
She's gonna be
himself.
a big beast.
How odd's
My
that?
kids named her Coco, but
I'll give you a quick update. We didn't film the scary part, which was putting the front apron back on. Actually, it went pretty well. We just made sure we taped off the edges here. We did tape the beading down on the inside to keep it where it needed to be. It looks like that had been done previously with some blue masking tape. So we're just putting the bolts back in the stiffener bar here at the leading edge. We'll do a little cleaning down here before we do the bottom fastenings, but I can actually do those by myself. I was just concerned about getting the apron back on. Then I don't think we followed up on the switches here. So there's what the switches look like. Obviously, it would be nice to have the switches matching, but at least we have the bracketry matching. So Alex can pop a new switch in there when he gets one from Revotech or from Moss or whoever it came from. So that looks good and both functioning. So we'll come back here and we'll just do some more bolting up. All right, we've got the front valence back on successfully. Everything's tightened back down. I've got the bonnet dropped. I'm just going to make sure that the gaps are good. It should be, because we really didn't do anything as far as the cross tube is concerned. It went back exactly where we took it out. So that's looking good. We did clean behind the grill a little bit and polished it before we go back and put the grill in. But we now need to hook up the wiring for the headlights and the running lights in the grill. So we're going to do that next. Oh, we also need to do the horn as well. So we'll feed those wires back up under the valence into the harness inside the engine compartment. Get that hooked up, and we'll put the bumper on as well. While we're here, I've got Alin's help. It's easier with two people to put the bumper on, so we'll do that. So we're getting pretty close to buttoning up the front end of this car. All right, I think we're pretty much done the wiring. Not him. Pretty much. I think I put I think
your probe.
I used my power probe and I put a ground on one wire. I think that was about it. So, so let's do a quick light check here. So. Let's start with the fogs first.
Fogs.
Yeah, fogs work, okay. Let's go with lights, headlights, and running lights. So
This is running light.
yeah, so let me do running lights. So fronts work. Let's check the rears. And I don't know if you can notice, but Alex has got really nice LEDs installed in this car. So those look good, okay. Let's go headlights. Okay, so headlights are working. Okay.
Switching.
Yeah. Okay, high and low beam. Hard to tell, but they are switching. Let's do signals. So left. Let's check the back. Hang on, let me check the back. Yeah, I can see it flashing here in the garage door. So that looks good, yeah. Okay. Right. Looks good. Listen to the sound that these headlights make. I don't know if you can hear it in the camera. Listen. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
When we power them up, we're going, what's that sound? Anyway, it sounded like something spooling up, like a turbo. So turn signal again. So we got that working at the back. So that's all looking good. All our indicator lamps are working up there. So good. Okay.
Brake lights, I never touched them. Let's make sure they work.
Brake lights.
Actually, you don't have pressure in the brake.
Oh yeah, because I have the brakes. He just squirted brake fluid all over my garage floor. No, I'm kidding. No brake fluid left. Anyway, we'll check that later once I get the rear brakes back installed. Okay, I think we can turn that off. Fog lights. Beautiful. So we're just going to center and tighten up the front bumper bar. And I think Lynn will be done for this job. So thanks again for your help. He can go back and work on other TRs. I think he's working on a TR250. So Anyway, let's just tighten that bumper up and then we'll call it a day out here. All right, Lynn and I are under the car. We were actually just putting the radiator protection shield back in place after we've got the front bumper on, because the radiator protection shield attaches to these front bumper bars. So we're under here and having a look, and Lynn notices that the fan, if you can see that, hold this light up for me. The fan, the red fan, the Bastic fan, is actually touching the radiator. Well, not necessarily the radiator, but the actual case of the bottom tank of the radiator. Now we're trying to move it on the slots for the mounting of the radiator, but we only have a little, not very much room. So,
and the slots we are at the end of the slots already, so now we have to widen the slots here so we can.
So we tried to go up top and see if we could manipulate the top to angle it more, but that's not helping us at all. So we're having to do some modifications under the car.
Because this extension from Bastic is too long.
Extension's too long, or I don't know, maybe this is a non-stock rad that's a thicker core. It's possible. I don't know.
I don't know why it's so long, this extension. Look, they have like an inch space here.
So obviously taking the extension off is not an option unless we want to take everything apart again, which we don't want to do. So I think our best case scenario is to try to do a slot on the rad down here and move it forward as far as we can up against this bar and see if that gives us enough clearance. It's going to be tight. This is cozy under here.
Good morning. It's time to work.
Oh my God.
Okay.
What a fiasco.
Yeah.
Okay, so we managed to get clearance. Not much, but clearance. This is the worst.
Yeah, so it turns out that most of the fins are a little bit further out than this one. This one is the closest. You wanna hold the camera while I'm turning?
This will be upside down probably, but hey.
So this is the one that is the closest, and then the next ones, like this one is better.
That one's okay.
This one has like half an inch. Fighting the gravity, the compression.
That's fine. Yeah, so really it's just the one that's a little bit close. The others are fine.
I guess it's the fan thingy.
That's fine. That's tons of room.
Okay, so
we're going to call that fixed. But what a pain in the butt.
We ended up drilling new hose for smaller boats, and because there's no slot here, it turns out there's no slot, it was just a hole. But when we pushed it that way, the slot ended up in the middle, like the hole ended up in the middle of the nut. So we ended up drilling new hose from the bottom up and put smaller bolts, and it worked.
All right, time for a nap.
Yeah, good night.
Good night. All right, now that we got the front of the car pretty much wrapped up, we're going to move back to the rear of the car and back to these brake back plates, which we now have painted up nicely on the front and the back, so they look 100% better than they did. We have all the brake cylinders, brake adjusters cleaned up, the lever, and the lock plates. We've got all the hardware degreased, so that's all ready to go. And these are for the adjusters, 2 per side. So we'll go ahead and rebuild these back plates and put the brakes back on, which we have over here. Don't forget the shims as well. And we'll get ready to put these back on the axle tubes. All right, we've got the rear brakes put back together. Here's the back sides. You got everything up nicely greased up. There's the front sides. The brake adjusters all lubed, moving freely. So those are looking good and ready to go back on the car, looking 100% better than they did. And so on to the next steps, which is to put these on the back to the rear axle. But we need to exchange those seals first. So we're going to do that now or next. All right, let's see if we can get these seals out easily enough. Slide hammer. Okay. So there is the old seal. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, and all we're doing is using a hook on the end of a slide hammer to pull that. Okay, so we'll do the other side, and then we'll come back and we'll get the new seals and tap those in with a seal installation tool. Let's see if I can get you a bit better angle from here. So those do look to be the original seals. They're actually leather seals. So if they're not original, they've been in here for an awful long time. All right. Moving. There you go. Bit more oil coming up from behind the seal, which is fine. Like I said, we're going to top up the differential after this anyway. So that's why we have the rag down on the ground. So one more seal out and we're good. So I've got the other seals ready to go in. I did check the size and they look proper. So we'll lube those up a little bit on the outside and on the actual rubber on the seal. We'll put a little bit of lube on them so when we slide the axles back in, they won't tear. So we'll go ahead and we'll install those now. All right, we've got our seal driver ready to go. Let's lube this up a little bit with a bit of oil. I mean, we can do this afterwards, but we'll just do the outside. Okay, so spring in. Set it in place squarely. And we're just going to tap it in with the tool. Let me get some paper towels to get my hands dried off. We'll come back. All right, we have the seal set in place, so we're just going to tap it to a different change in tone, which means it's seated. So can you hear that change in tone? So there you go. It's in there solid. So we'll move on to the other side, do the same thing. All right, good morning. We're back on the 1958 Triumph TR3A project. And we've just got the passenger side rear axle and obviously the brake assembly installed with the freshly painted back plate. We've got everything hooked up. Hardline is hooked back up, as well as the emergency brake cable. We do need to adjust the brakes once we get the drums back on, because we've got the adjuster backed all the way out. And so we'll put the brake drum on and then we'll just spin the wheel until we get some friction happening. And then we'll just back the adjuster off a little bit. That's how we adjust the rear brakes on this car. And it's just a simple wrench. I think it's a 3/8 wrench on these ones. I'll have to check again. But anyway, we'll adjust those after we get the drum back on. We're just about to do that. We've got it here. We've got the brake cleaner standing by. We'll give that a quick wipe out. And then we'll refit that. And like we said, we'll do the a quick brake adjustment here on the rear. And then we'll move on to the driver's side. All right, we've got everything buttoned up here on the driver's side, and I just can't let these drums go without being painted, unfortunately. My OCD is getting to me. So I'm going to have to paint these. So we'll take them back off, give them a quick scratch down with a Scotch-Brite, prep them up, and get them into black paint, because I can't let these go like this. They're pretty rusty, and you'll be able to see through those wheels. So I want them to be nice and black. So we'll take them back off and we'll give them a quick coat of paint. Thought I could get away with it, but I can't do it. All right, guys, welcome back to the garage. It's Monday evening, so Easter Monday. So I had a good weekend visiting the family over the long weekend, and now back home and out in the garage for a little quick evening project, I hope. So as you can see here, we've got our new glove box on standby. We are going to replace this old soggy, rotten one, out of shape one. We're going to rescue the old bracket, which we require. This is in the incorrect location. It actually needs to go into one of the corners and pick up one of the brackets underneath the dash. But we'll rescue what we can off here. There's a few spire nuts on here that we need to move onto the new box. And we'll do that before we go ahead and install that in this opening inside here. So this is a little bit of a fiddly job, but not too bad for a hopefully quick evening project. So we'll get that underway and see how things go. I'll bring you along with an update along the way. All right, guys, the glove box is now installed. You might notice it's got a little bit of a gap here on the left-hand side, but that's really the best I could do, because if you have a look at the old box, you'll see how crushed it is in this corner, and that was to make the old box fit. Well, there's a problem, existing problem that I can't really overcome. The harness is kind of rerouted in a different fashion, let's say, which prevents me from getting the box moved any further over to the left. Plus, there's a lot of stuff sitting on. There's a bar that holds the heater, and on that bar, there's a relay for the overdrive installed, which technically should be actually on the bulkhead under there, way under. But it's been moved up to this bar, which again encroaches on the left-hand side of the box, getting it moved over further. So that's why we've had a little bit of a gap there. But functionality-wise, it's much better. It's not drooping. The door closes perfectly. It does hide that gap. So no issues there. And that looks much better and much cleaner with the box sitting up as opposed to sitting down on about a 45-degree angle. So we're going to call that box good, much better than it was. Not perfect, but again, I'm not going to go and start rerouting main wiring harnesses and a bunch of other things in order to make this glove box fit. So we're going to call it good. All right, back to another project, or on to another project. All right, it's Tuesday morning, the 22nd of April, and Elaine's just done the school run again and come and gave me a hand with bleeding the brakes. So the brakes are now bled, and the clutch is good as well. So thanks very much for doing that. And on with your regular day. Yep. Looking at other rusty beauties. All right. All right, now that we've got the brakes bled, I want to go back to the rear of the car, and I want to top up the differential. That's number one. And number two, I want to set the brakes. Remember, I mentioned that we need to adjust the brakes now that we've played around with them in the back. So we're going to adjust the brakes. So I do have the drums painted up nicely on both sides. So like I said, we'll get under there, fill the differential with GL4, and then we'll work on setting the brakes back here. We'll probably put the rims and tires back on, check the air pressure back there, call that good. And then we'll move back up to the front of the car and do what we need to do up here. You may notice that the valve cover is off, and that is in order to fix. There's a riser here for the heater hose and a tap, basically. Then it goes over to this bulkhead fitting in here. It goes inside to the heater. Well, there was a hairline crack actually in the tube, I noticed. So that's being taken off to be welded or brazed. So we're getting that done, and we'll return that back in just a few minutes and put the valve cover back on, but that's why that's off. So anyway, making progress. We're just checking off the boxes. So let's go to the back of the car, finish that job, put the tires back on, and call the rear end of the car done, and we'll move back up to the front end of the car. All right, for anybody who wants to know where the fill port is on the differential, it is that port up there. And if you notice, looks like somebody has scribed a mark on the actual plug and on the case, or on the rear cover of the differential. I guess that's to signify that it's tight. I'm not sure. Anyway, it is super tight, whoever put that plug in there. So again, we're gonna have trouble getting that out. I've just got a regular wrench down here. I've been reefing on it and it hasn't moved. So we're gonna have to get something with a bit more torque out here to be able to move that off of there. It's a 1/2 inch actually on this fill plug. I don't know if that's factory or not. Normally, I think the bottom plug here, I think is 7/16. So I guess the top one here is a little bit larger. So I can't remember what it is on stock, but I know on the TR6s, I think it's a 7/16. So it's probably a little bit bigger, up to 1/2 inch here on the TR3. Anyway, we'll get something with a little bit more heft to get that off of there. All right, just like any Triumph, what you do basically is you fill the top port with oil until it runs back out the port. Then you put the plug back in. So we're good to go here on the rear end. So we'll button that up, tighten it back up, and then we'll move on to the next thing, which is adjusting those rear brakes. And if anybody's interested in what we're actually putting in the rear end and the differential, this is what we're using from Miller Oils, the classic gear oil EP8090, which is a GL4 oil. You can see it says GL4 down here, and that's important in these cars. Okay, we're just about to adjust this rear drum brake, and you can see I've got the wrench here on the back of the brake back plate where the adjuster is. Can't really, I don't know if I can give you a shot of that. Oh yeah, I can. So there it is down there. So basically, in order to tighten this, we want to go counterclockwise. And we'll basically just keep turning the wheel until we feel this get some friction on it and start to lock up. And then we'll end up backing that off to adjust these brakes. We'll do it on both sides, and then we should be good to go. So we'll do that now. All right, after you adjust the brakes like we've done, we just want to do a handbrake check to make sure everything is working fine. So this one is a fly-off handbrake, so I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not. Push the button, pull up, let it go, and that locks it where it needs to be. So that's nice and tight. To release it, just pull back, release the button, let her go. So that seems to be functioning properly. Make sure our wheels still spin, which they do, and we're golden. So on to the next thing, and that is to grease the spot in the axle tube. So that's good. So there's a grease zerk on the axle tube just ahead of the bearing in the hub that you need to grease. So we're going to get under there and give that probably 3 or 4 pumps, since we cleaned all that grease out when we replaced the oil seal down there. So we'll go ahead and we'll grease that area there, and I think we're good to go to put the wheels back on. And for anybody who's interested in where that grease zerk is, here it is on the rear tube. You can see it right there where my finger is. So we'll just grease that up, and we'll call the rear end done after we pop those wheels back on. All right, we're just going back and taking a look at Alex's list here. So number 1 was replace the steering rack with the rack and pinion, the Bastock rack and pinion kit, which we've done. Number 2 was install the electric fan and switch, and we've done that. We've got a manual switch, and it's also working off a thermostat, so it should switch on automatically. If it happens to get too hot, it'll click on it. I believe it's 185 and turn off at 170. That's Fahrenheit, obviously. Replace the fog spotlight switch. Well, we attempted to do that, but if you watched the previous video, one of the switches was a bit dodgy. So we did replace the mount. So all Alex needs to do is really replace the switch. The wiring is good under there, and the switch is easy enough to replace when he gets a new one. So that should be easy enough for him to complete once he gets a new switch. All the rubber coolant hoses are done, including the ones under the dash. We just have this upper one still left to do. So this hose here that goes to the bulkhead that attaches to that tube is here on the bench. We'll do that shortly, and then we'll come back to the list. Now we're on point number 5. Well, let's talk about point number 6. So the leaky rear axle seals, we did those. And then back up to point number 5, replace the oil pan gasket. So I was having a conversation with Alex, and I said I would take a look at this and determine whether it was really necessary to do that, because these often leak, A, from the rear seal, and B, from the timing cover. So I've just got under there and I've taken a quick look, and honestly, to me, it doesn't look all that excessive as far as oil is concerned. Yes, there is oil, and I'll take a shot or a video of it while I'm under the car. So there is an oil film on the oil pan, but I can tell that it actually is leaking a bit from the from the timing cover and probably blowing back over the oil pan itself. And it is leaking a little bit from the rear seal, which is normally common on these cars. It also has a road draft tube, so that doesn't help as well. That puts some oil vapor down in that area as well. So what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to clean things up down there with some brake cleaner and paper towels just to get it cleaned up. I'm going to go through and I'm going to retorque all of the bolts on the oil pan and see where we're at as far as torque is concerned. And then I think we're probably just going to leave it, I think. Maybe we'll run it up a bit. Once I get that valve installed, we can heat it up to temperature, get back under there and see if there are any visible leaks. I doubt there will be. Again, like I said, I think it's mostly rear main seal and the front timing cover seal that are the culprits. And that's sort of common on these cars. Now, this car's been sitting here for 2 weeks and it's obviously sitting on carpet where you would actually see drips of oil you know, on the carpet, and I'm not seeing any of that. So the car doesn't seem to be dripping profusely, which is good. So that's, again, another reason why I don't think that the oil pan gasket necessarily needs to be redone. At this point, anyway. All right, we're under the car, and I'll do the best I can as far as filming is concerned. So here is the bottom of the timing cover, and you can see it's fairly wet there. So, that, like I said, it's a common area for these to leak out of the bottom of the timing cover. So it potentially could use a timing cover gasket, which is a bit of a pain to get to, so I'm not going to suggest that he does that. Again, oil leaks are kind of normal on Triumphs, so I don't get too worried about seeing minor leaks anyway. Now, going back to the oil pan, you can see there is a few drops basically here, and it's quite greasy and grimy here on the front of the pan, but that's normal again. That's just normal road grime. Then as you move back towards the pan, towards the back of the pan, it doesn't look too bad. There's, again, a little bit of a film of oil and little drips here and there, but nothing major. Pretty dry on the side of the oil pan. I don't know if you can see up there, that's pretty dry. So I know it's hard to film under here. So I'm going to suggest I don't think that Alex needs to change the gasket on the oil pan at this particular point in time. As mentioned, I am going to go through and I'm going to retorque all these bolts. I'm sure they're probably over-torqued right now, but I just want to generally check them just to make sure they're torqued properly at least. You can also see on the bottom of the oil filter, remember I mentioned there was a gas leak there, so you can see the staining there from the fuel pump being right above that oil filter. So we've hopefully fixed that leak. So anyway, let me get the brake cleaner out, the paper towels, and clean this up a bit, and we'll give you one more shot of it before we go up to the top of the car. Okay, we've managed to clean things up a little bit, and I think it looks a little cleaner under here. And there's what the front of the bottom of the timing cover looks like. You can see that there are brand new lock washers on there, so it looks like somebody's been down here fairly recently because those lock washers are pretty shiny. And then we got the bottom of the pan and the sides of the pan cleaned up, so that's looking better. So we'll go ahead and we'll torque everything down to 18 foot-pounds is the manual torque. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that now, and we'll call the oil pan done, and we'll get Alex to monitor it. Like I said, I don't think changing anything out as far as the gasket is concerned is going to change anything, so I'm not going to do it if I don't think it's going to make a difference. All right, the good news on the oil pan is that all the bolts are torqued up, and actually quite a few of them took a bit of torque to tighten them up, so that's a good thing. So those are all done. Everything's buttoned up underneath and cleaned up underneath. So moving back to the rear of the car, and now we're about to put the wheels back on. This is actually the front passenger side that I marked. So the rear is over here. Anyway, the point of this is that we are going to clean up the inside of the rims as I normally would on my cars. I'm going to clean these up before we put them back on. That part of the rim is actually visible on the wires. We're looking through the wire wheels, so we'll clean these up the best we can before putting them back on and torquing those down. All right, that's 100% better, and now I feel better about putting them back on the car, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, the first wheel's back on, and I'm certainly glad I painted that brake drum. You can see how visible it is through the wire wheels. It makes a huge difference just having that cleaned up, so that looks good. Alex will have to do a little cleaning on the outside of the wires. I cleaned them up a little bit, but didn't go too crazy. So we'll move on to the other side, get that wheel on, and then we can probably button up the front as well, so we can get this wheel on the front and get ready eventually for a string alignment. All right, we've got the wheels back on the car, and I think we'll put an end to, I believe this is part 5 of the video. We still need a few things done on the car, but nothing major. We still need to do the string alignment at some point on the car. We need to still add the heater pipe on the car with that remaining radiator hose. Put the coolant back in, run it up to temperature, make sure our thermostat works on the electric fan, and make sure everything is leak-free as far as all the new radiator hoses that we exchanged out. I need to do the paint on the slip ring over here and make that a little bit less visible or invisible. We'll see what we can do with that. And I think then it's pretty much ready to go for a test drive. So yeah, looking forward to that. I can already tell this is going to be night and day as to what it was before. I was just playing with the steering wheel, cranking it back and forth, and the steering effort is much less, as you can imagine. All right, guys, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, thanks for commenting, and thanks for subscribing. We will see you on the next video, and that should be the end of this project, hopefully. All right, see you then.